Coyote. That is a coyote. He doesn't seem unfriendly. He's been kind of following us for a couple days. Okay, let's try this again. I still hear them. I think we're basically surrounded. I hear their footsteps in the woods. But I just think they're adorable, honestly. I love coyotes. For me, I just feel like I'm looking at myself. And I'm a little bit jealous. Yeah, I'm a little jealous. So when I learn how to turn into a coyote, I'll join them. So here we are on sacred Cherokee land. The journey has been journeying. Friends and family and strangers and lovers. The journey has been journeying. So happy full moon in Aquarius. I give thanks that we can lay here in peace with these beautiful creatures protecting us. There's dragonflies buzzing. The wind is pretty gentle today. The sky is clear. Well, mostly. I consider a couple clouds clear. Got some blooming crepe myrtle behind us. And there is some hibiscus down in the pond here, but you can't quite see her. It's my laptop, so I don't want to move it all around. Just take a moment to be present where you are. Come into your present moment. Come into the beauty of where you are. If you don't know the indigenous people of the land you're on, maybe pause. Give it a little Google search. Whatever kind of search engine you prefer. So we are just at the tail end of the Aquarius full moon energy. And let me tell you plural, y'all, yuns. The time from Cancer new moon to Aquarius full moon is often a challenge for me. Mentally, emotionally. Oh my goodness, this gorgeous creature. I wish I could just zoom in with my eyeballs and show you all what I'm seeing. But this little coyote keeps popping out of the woods and then turning tail and going back. But he gives me just such a curious and cute vibe. Like, he doesn't at all look like he's trying to, snack on my legs. So, Cancer new moon to Aquarius full moon. Cancer new moon is a time when I tend to feel lonely about nothing. All the sensitivities will come up. I'll feel very raw and exposed. And I often feel that I really would love trusted, intimate company. That could be platonic, it could be romantic, it could be all kinds of things, but just to have trusted people around me at that time feels proper. But the funny thing is, I rarely do. It's often a time of year where I just end up being on my own for that time and really going through it. So I've almost come to accept it. I've just come to accept it as something that happens. And then Leo season is interesting. No shade on my Leos, no shade on my Leos. But I think I feel during Leo season a little bit how I feel around Leos, where I'm enjoying the warmth, but sometimes it's like a bit much. Where I'm just like, ooh, okay, dial it down. So it's kind of getting me ready for the autumn. It's getting me ready to call in what comes next. So one of the holidays that is around this time of year is very sacred to me, and that is the Irish holiday of Lughnasadh. And Lughnasadh is known as the first harvest, the first of 3. And of course, with any harvest, we are reaping what we sow. So it's a very powerful lesson in manifestation. It's a powerful lesson in giving consciousness to the energy that we're putting out into the universe and watching what has come back to us based on what we have given, what we have declared, what we've planted, what we have cultivated. So all of our lives are, there's a bit more light over here, isn't there? Just in a shadowy spot. All of our lives are a tapestry of many things. It's easy to say that everything in your life is there because you called it in. But in some levels, that's not always true, or it doesn't seem to be. We may not remember how or when we summoned the certain thing that is in existence for us right now. But there it is. So I've been thinking a lot about being at peace with where we are and finding a way to pour happiness and joy into where we currently are, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of what we might prefer. There's always a way to pour more positive energy into where we are. So sometimes I see it like this. There is an energetic container around our life. And the boundaries of that container is really up to us in many ways. Sometimes certain boundaries have been set on our life before we really gave our consent. Okay, so whatever beliefs we might have inherited from our parents, from our upbringing, our schooling, our religious organization, whatever it may be, that can determine the size of our life, the size of our aura, the size of our perspective, the point of view that we have. So let's say you feel like life gave you something that is that big. That's all the space you have to work with. Well, then it's very important to fill that space with as much positivity as we can. It's important to find every little corner, every little cranny of that container that we've been given and find where can we get creative, where can we add some positivity, where can we add some whimsy, where can we add elements of what we prefer. So one analogy I can give is there was once when I lived in a storage unit in Washington, D.C. And I actually felt pretty brilliant about it because I was starting to kind of hack the whole hamster wheel of work and rent and going around and round and round that circle. And I was like, dang, I just don't see myself, paying so much money for a place to live that I, barely have resources left over. Y'all know what I'm talking about more than I even know what I'm talking about because I've walked away from that lifestyle a long time ago. Even though a storage unit may not be an ideal living situation for many people, if all you've got is a concrete box, make it pretty. Hang up your posters. Hang up some little lights. So it doesn't really matter always what is the size of your container that you've been given. I've seen homeless folks on the street who are in a little, 5x5 square on the side of the road having a blast. A beautiful example of this is this beautiful being in New Orleans who will stand in this median, and I think he puts a hat out or something, he puts something out so people can donate, so people can, compensate him for the positive energy he's putting out in the universe. And all he might have, I don't know what his living situation is, but all he may have is that space. But y'all, he is filling up that space. He's dancing. He's like sun worshiping. He's just moving his body so beautifully in that space that he has. And how many people have a mansion and they don't even do that? Right? So it doesn't really matter what you have materially, but it matters what you are pouring into your life. What are you cultivating? Because that's what you will harvest. That is exactly what you will harvest. So, of course, the universe does not discriminate. The universe does not judge you for your desires. So if you desire material wealth, you can get material wealth. But if in the pursuit of material wealth, you kind of forgot to pray for the other things, you forgot to manifest joy and peace and laughter and whimsy and love, then you might get the biggest house in the world and find yourself miserable because you forgot to pour joy into your life. You can have both. You can definitely have both. I do think there's a lot to be said, though, about having less materialistically and how that will reveal more energetically that is within you. So backtracking a little bit to Lughnasadh, the Irish holiday. But Lughnasadh is the first harvest. Lughnasadh is also seen as the death of summer. So there's also this element of mourning at this time. There's this interesting thing that happens when we manifest a certain path. Other doors will close. To say yes to one thing might just say no to another. And that's okay. And it's okay to mourn the timeline that you see drifting away from you that you didn't choose. It's okay to mourn that. And it's healthy to mourn that. And it's healthy to tell yourself, that's not what's happening. This is what's happening. And that can be very healthy. We have returned to the aubergine. Yes. the vision machine came to me in a dream on a mountain so serene. I think it was the Aquarius New Moon. It was Aquarius New Moon. I digress. We're back in the aubergine. I would love to speak a little bit on Lughnasadh and share a bit of a personal story. A couple years ago, I think about 2 years ago now, maybe 3. Okay. I traveled to Ireland and had an incredible adventure bouncing between Ireland and Italy and then back to Ireland. That was a whole thing. But I met a beautiful friend in Ireland on the hill of Tara, of all places. It's basically the heart chakra of the island. And we met at the base of a stone that has the carved image of Sheila na gig, who is a wild woman from ancient Celtic lore. She's often seen holding her vulva wide open. So do with that symbolism what you will. She's very much a fertility goddess. But a lot of ancient deities get kind of reduced to fertility. There's so much more. But I'm giving the abridged version, and I also am not the expert on these traditions, so I highly encourage you to do your research. But I happened to be there for the holiday of Lughnasadh, which was so sacred and special for so many reasons. Lughnasadh is a festival devoted to he's now considered a god, but the ancient hero Lugh, and his name translated means light. Lughnasadh is sort of the Irish Olympics in a way. People would come from all over Europe and North Africa to come to Ireland for Lughnasadh. And there would be chariot races, they would do hurling, they'd be throwing massive, what do they throw? Logs and rocks. Tests of strength. Of course, displays of magic and divination, beautiful ritual sex, coupling of, men and women. And everybody, but as far as men and women goes, in like traditional marriages. But y'all know that the sex was happening between everybody. But the marriages, as far as we know, were mostly between men and women. Because they wanted to have those babies. They wanted to, grow the tribe. So Lughnasadh is an interesting holiday. As I mentioned before, it's considered the first harvest of 3. The 3 being Lughnasadh, Alban Elfed, which is autumn equinox, and then Samhain, which is Halloween, basically. And Lughnasadh is interesting. It shows us this time when humanity was transitioning from living on the outskirts of the wild to the old growth forest basically being tamed, so that the land was more hospitable for humankind. So I am definitely, I miss the times when we were at the mercy of nature and it wasn't as easy for us to just dominate every blade of grass. But apparently some of the deities of old would disagree with me, because it was none other than Tilchen, who I will talk about, who was known for clearing out the central plains of Ireland so that people could grow food and build bigger villages, basically. So who is Tilchen? To know who is Tilchen, we will go back to Lugh. Lugh is the grandson of Balor. There's lots of names, but stay with me. And why I love learning about these stories is because they're very symbolic and they're very connected to the seasons and the earth and what's happening in the world at that time. So Balor is a giant. Okay, whoops, I accidentally clicked something. Yes, so we're back on Balor. So Balor is a giant. It's unclear if he is a physical giant or if he's just described as being immense in power. But what everyone does remember about him is that he had a very powerful eye, and his eye was often kept closed because it had the power to wither crops. It could destroy the landscape. And I see the eye of Balor symbolically as being the summer sun, having the power to scorch the crops, having the power to kind of oppress human life a little bit in unhealthy doses. So we see this theme often in a lot of ancient Celtic mythology, where you have this tension between the tribe and the land, and the seeking of balance between the tribe and the land, and humans bringing the wild world into a place of domestication so that it's more comfortable for them to exist. Right? You have this tension between the Tuatha and the Fomorians. And the Fomorians often represent parts of nature that we don't quite like, parts of nature that make us uncomfortable. Not necessarily inherently evil, but they're just parts of nature that make us a little uncomfortable. So Balor is one such being. He's one of the Fomorians. He represents the side of the summer that is a bit too much. And Lu represents the side of the summer that we like. He represents the light that we enjoy. There's so much more to say, but so basically, Lu is Balor's grandson. There was a prophecy that said only Balor's grandson could strike him down. So the Tuatha come up with this plot basically to bring about the grandson of Balor and raise him in secret. Yet Lu was one of three. He was a triplet. And Balor managed to devour two of his siblings, but Lu was raised in secret. So he was first said to be fostered in the other world, in the realm of the Fae, by Manannán mac Lir, who is basically the ocean personified. He's the fairy king of the ocean. So Lu was at first fostered in his realm, and in the realm of Manannán mac Lir, he learned many skills. He learned magic and music and poetry and art and all kinds of beautiful things. Again, this is the abridged version. After he is fostered by Manannán mac Lir, he is then fostered by Tíocha. Tíocha is the goddess for whom Lughnasadh was created. Tíocha gave her life basically destroying the forests of the central plains of Ireland so that people could people the land. And her death was such a tragedy and so heartbreaking, of course, for Lu, that he established the festival games and the ritual of Lughnasadh. So again, I think I already mentioned it was sort of like the Olympics, right? There was all kinds of competitions, just rituals, ritual theater, all kinds of things going on. And it wasn't so much a celebration of the death of Balor, but it was more of an honoring of the life of Tíocha. So the place where Tíocha died, the place where she died, is actually a physical location that I went to when I was in Ireland. So I went here with my dear friend who I met at the Hill of Tara. She's an amazing kindred spirit. I'm keeping her a bit vague just because I respect people's privacy. I didn't ask if I could mention her in the video, so I don't want to, give her name or anything at this time. But we clicked right away. And she welcomed me into her home, which was and is the most beautiful, cozy, comfortable, quintessential Irish home you could ever ask for. And she's living there with her two beautiful children, or adult children, but children nonetheless of hers. And I got to meet her family, her entire family. There's just so many beautiful stories came from that. But she knew, I told her, we immediately got into talking about mythology and lore and spirituality and all of these topics. And she said, how would you like to go to the final resting place of Tilcha? And that place is called Tilchin. I think early in the video, I might have referred to the goddess as Tilchin. That was a mistake. The goddess is Tilcha, and the location is Tilchin. And the anglicized version of that is Telltown, Ireland. So I'm going to be referring to it by the Irish name of Tilchin. So Tilchin now is a very small farming town. There's not really much going on there, to be honest. The place where the goddess Tilcha is resting is now a cow pasture. And we drove right up to it on this location that is there's still this natural mound there that's flat on top. And in the woods nearby, there's all these different mounds that were built up for the celebration of Lughnasadh. So many awesome things happened in that area. So the farmer, it was so cool. He was like, "Oh, I didn't even know people knew about this anymore. Yeah, of course you can come on the land and check it out." And I just didn't even know people cared about this. That blew my mind. That there's not still people celebrating Lughnasadh on this hallowed ground. I was just in worship, and it was just amazing to me to be there after reading about it. And it is a place that my ancestors went, that some of my ancestors went. And I wonder if even more of my ancestors than I think went there. Maybe not just the Irish ones, but maybe some of the African ones made their way up there. Who knows? But it was a very sacred time, and it was amazing to be there. And we're standing on this flat little plateau, and my friend is pointing to this hill in the distance, and she's saying, that people would take the chariots and go from this platform all the way around the hill and back. And that was the race that they would do. So it was beautiful. One of the strong symbols of Lughnasadh is to bury some flowers, right? So even just these little flowers that I have, I'll be burying them today. Just as a symbol for the ancestors, that I haven't forgotten that. And so we did bury some flowers up there on that land for Tilcha. Yes, eventually, well, we ended up venturing out to so many different places. Anyway, so long story short, Lugh does eventually die as well, which is interesting. The Tuatha Dé Danann are harder to kill than we are, but it's not impossible. They can be wounded and they can die. Excuse me. So Lugh does eventually die, but it's not really part of the story of Lughnasadh. His death is not necessarily a part of that story. But his death does... It's interesting because I just said it's not really part of the story, and it really kind of isn't, but I still see it as being relevant because his death basically gives way to the time when the Tuatha Dé Danann diminish. All right, so this is when the fairies start to go into the earth, into the She, into the mountains, and become more of a legend. They become less part of people's everyday lives. This was at the arrival of who's called the Malaysians. And there's a little bit of a debate over who the Malaysians were and in regards to the ancestors of the modern day Irish. I think the translation of Malaysian is like the children of Spain or something, because they were said to have come from Iberia. So do with that what you will. But then I think if someone was looking at it from a purely archaeological perspective, there were many, many waves of immigrants who came into Ireland, making up who is now known as the Irish people. So all that to say, they really reaped what they sowed. I mean, I don't know what the hell kind of people you have to be to wage war on the fairies, but they got what they wanted. I mean, the old growth forests are mostly gone, and there you go. There's your architecture. There's highways that are just absolutely skewering some of the fairy mounds. I mean, some stuff is still intact, but they really reaped what they sowed with that one. So, I have done a lot of processing of my grief around that, to be honest. Yes, reading some of these stories for the first time brought an incredible level of grief to the surface of my mind. Just remembering what that felt like in a past life kind of way, to watch the ancient world diminish and to watch the old powers of the earth die away, to make space for this new civilization. And we still see that happening even now more and more. Wild green spaces in some areas being destroyed so they can put an apartment complex made of particle board. It's just they were being replaced by something cheaper. And then whatever was there before becomes a distant memory that people don't even know about. So because of these things, because of these patterns that I see in the modern day, um, it's easy to understand how this mythic and magical past has become, just stories to people, has become fiction for people, because so many people don't even know the first thing about what that reality was like. And there's almost no trace of it. And so, I mean, there is if you know what to look for, and if you resonate with that, then you know exactly what that is. But again, if there was a big, gorgeous, 200-year-old oak tree that was destroyed and then an apartment complex was put there, and then you try to describe to people later how beautiful that tree was, they may or may not, they may not get it. It may not enter their mind. If they're not inclined to care about those things, they're just like, oh, okay, cool, moving on. And you could write a whole book about the tree, and it would now sound like mythology because it's now gone. And that only happened over the course of 5-10 years. Right. So imagine the level of human amnesia that is really there for these mythic eras. Um, the frequency and the vibration that the earth could hold when there were all these old growth forests and um, pure water sources. There was so much beautiful, delicious energy that was happening on the earth that has been diminished. But all that dies shall be reborn. And we know this. The earth has the power to heal tenfold, 100-fold what has been taken. So that's what I take from these stories, very much so. That is very much what I take from these stories. And even the burying of the flowers, the bodies of the flowers will decay and they will nourish the soil that will give nutrients to the next generation of seeds. So it's never truly done. It's never truly over with. I love that the fairies just went beneath the earth, where humans can't really perceive them. I love that they're hiding from human perception. They're still there. hmm So I'm going to leave it at that. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. This has been a special, special episode of Living Earth Transmissions. Um, and as always, I would love to know that it blesses you. I would love to know your reflections on it. Please feel free to type any reflections you might have. And carry some of this energy with you. So, sending love from here, and we shall see you next time. You shall see me next time.